at the moment, but we will try and do the meeting to the best of our ability. And I'd like to also thank all the officers that are here and that have helped to get this thing off the ground. So we'll have a good meeting, hopefully, and we'll go through all the items that we need to and hopefully complete as quickly as we can. I've got one or two housekeeping items to start us off of the usual nature. A fire drill is not due to take place during the meeting. If the fire alarm sounds continuously, people should leave the building by the nearest exit and then disperse away for 20 minutes. Secondly, as members will be aware, it has been agreed that this meeting will proceed in order to transact certain important items of business. You will notice that there are fewer councillors and officers present than is usually the case. This is because we are operating on a quorum basis with a minimal number of people present. We will record the apologies of councillors who are not present, but it should not be assumed that all of these councillors are self-isolating. In order to follow the current advice on social distancing, councillors have been asked to sit further apart than they would normally be the case. We have also asked that our facilities team not provide water for this meeting. So we have asked you to bring your own water or whatever you feel a need to drink within reason. We'll also be proposing that we postpone the consideration of certain items of business. I will say more about this in my announcements later on. We were due this morning to have a moment of reflection with Sally Jones, who I've asked not to come in the current circumstances, and I've wished her and her organisation well. I would like to still stand for a few moments because there is a lot for us to reflect on at the moment, and I think it would be useful just to stand for a minute to reflect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Starting, if we may, with the apologies. Councillor Patel.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a long list of apologies. Councillor Baker, Brackenbury, Robin Brown, Shepherd, Malcolm Longley, Michael Clark, Annabel Dick-Capel-Brooks, Scott Edwards, Martin Griffiths, Dudley Hughes, Sylvia Hughes, Andy Kilbride, Alan Matthews, Andy Mercer, Jill Mercer, Sandra Naden Hawley, Steve Osborne, Bill Parker, Adil Sadigov, Judy Shepherd, and Alan Walker. Also an apology from Independent Conservative Sam Rumans.
Thank you. Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair. Rather than read everything out, I'll put it in the book over there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stamborough.
Apologies from Councillor Meredith today, Chair.
Thank you. I note that there's no independent councillors here today. Item 3 is the minutes of the last meeting held on the 20th of February, which are in your packs. Does Council wish that I sign the minutes as they are? Agree. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you. We've asked the members of the public that wanted to speak today to defer that request and come back at a later stage. declaration of interest by councillors, I will only read out the first paragraph because we all understand the importance of it, but councillors are asked to note they only need to declare an interest at the start of the meeting if that interest has not been recorded in the register of interest. If any councillor declares such an interest, they must add it to the registrar within 28 days. Chairman's announcements. As you would have obviously understood, we've cancelled the garden party on Saturday, the 18th of April, and hopefully we're going to rearrange a new date as soon as the position becomes clearer. In order to reduce the risk to everyone attending, I wish to propose that we postpone consideration of all of the non-urgent items, and these are the annual report by SACRA, local government reorganisation, changes to the schedules of committee meetings, appointments of new arrangements to the Anglian Great Ouse Regional Flood and Coastal Committee agenda, the report on climate change, and also the principal opposition group has advised me that they wish to withdraw both of their motions from the agenda, which in the circumstances I thank them for doing that. So does Council consent to postponing consideration of these items to a future meeting? Agreed. Anyone against that? Thank you. Item 6 has no petitions, but the leader of the council has asked to make a statement next about the current situation.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm making this statement on behalf of myself as Leader of the Council, the Conservative Group, in agreement with the Leader of the Opposition and the Leader of the Liberal Democrat Group, representing all members, I hope. So we can all agree that we are facing an unprecedented situation nationally, and we are rightly concerned for our friends, our neighbours, businesses and our residents, especially those who may be vulnerable or elderly. As a local authority, we face the challenging few months ahead. We are assured that the Council has been working with every partner and agency across the county with support of government to prepare and implement the robust plans to manage the impact of coronavirus. The Council will do whatever is needed to keep residents safe. The critical incident plan was mobilised last week, and since then the Council has been putting in place comprehensive teams, plans and contingencies. There is a comprehensive joint COVID command and control structure in place between all partners and a single strategic command centre, with all senior leaders coming together to oversee the response. This structure has been in place for 3 weeks and plans are progressing well. Our own emergency planning team have been working with services tirelessly to support this, and the Public Health Service has been at the forefront of system planning and decision making. It is important we make informed and sensible decisions to manage the situation effectively. Right now, schools are being communicated with and advice is being offered in relation to the announcement made regarding schools yesterday afternoon. This will not be a quick fix, and we are having to prioritise our efforts. The Chief Executive, elected members and commissioners all agree that the virus outbreak must have our full attention, and to that end the authority is now repurposing staff to these tasks and vital services. Our key frontline services like adults and children's social care will continue to function, and staff are all being repurposed and will work closely with partners and our hospitals to make sure we can still keep people safe in appropriate settings. This may mean moving people in the short term, but their safety and well-being will be the first concern. In line with our plan, this means Council has stood down some lower priority services to focus our staff and effort on preparing support to those who need our help. As soon as possible and it is safe, these services, of course, will be resurrected. Protecting our own workforce will be vital, and therefore the decision was taken yesterday to allow staff who can work from home to do so, and where they are not in one of the critical areas of frontline service or needed to support our COVID response, they are allowed to work from home. All staff will remain in contact and will be set clear tasks and rules about how they can work and what work they need to do to support the wider picture. We recognise that community and community spirit is one of the most vital resources we have in this situation. This is particularly the case in a county with a diversity of rural and urban areas with many vulnerable and elderly residents. We support efforts to harness this spirit in a way that keeps people and our volunteers safe. The Council has a dedicated community resilience lead within our emergency planning team who will be coordinating this. The Council will be making arrangements to publish information online on behalf of all partners shortly, and to which all volunteer and community groups can be directed to get advice, guidance, and to be safely connected to those in need, and who our residents can be certain are genuine in their offers of help. And as soon as this is available, we will advise all members to where to direct offers of help and to where to get information from. We would like to thank all members and staff in advance for their professionalism and support during this challenging time, and believe that by us all working together, we will all get safely through this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Could I ask Councillor Stone to comment on it?
Thank you very much. And can I thank the leader for taking the initiative of preparing a cross-party statement as a reassurance to staff and all our communities. I think it's really, really important that we're all seen as councillors to be pulling together and doing everything that we can to support staff and our communities in these very, very challenging times. I do think we have an institutional responsibility to make sure all our staff are safe, and that means whether they're in our buildings or going out into the communities and about their business. So I'm sure further plans will be made available to all of us so that we can see exactly how that institutional responsibility is going to happen. We're all very aware and heartened, I'm sure, about the responses coming from the community, people expressing their willingness to help their neighbours in an unprecedented way. It is absolutely fantastic, but it brings with it its own risks. And we know that scammers and predators are ever present. A tiny little minority of people, nevertheless, we need to be on our guard against them. So I'm really pleased that in this statement it's talking about coordination of effort, and people will find a lot of reassurance that they can go somewhere for some expert help and advice about how to manage that community support. There's going to be a real issue, there is already a real issue about scarcity of food and resource. I'm hoping that the coordinating teams will help manage that issue as well. But can I just say, just finish by saying thank you very much. I think it's really important that the public can find reassurance in the work of their elected members. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Stanbrough.
Thank you, Chair. And if I could also welcome the statement from the leader, it's really helpful, and I fully support everything he said. I've got some questions, I think, more than anything else. I don't necessarily expect answers now, but it would be useful to know some of these things when it's appropriate. As regard the Comprehensive Joint COVID Committee, I think it would be useful for all of us to know who the County Council's representatives are on that committee, so that should we wish to make representations, we can do. I note the point about the virus outbreak having our full attention, and I absolutely agree it must do. It mustn't have all of our attention, though, and I think everyone would agree with that. There are other important things this council still needs to be doing. As regards moving people in the short term, I'm assuming that's staff, and all I would hope is that in that case, we do our best to reassure them about any uncertainties they may feel over that. That the county's union branch was only tweeting yesterday that yesterday was one of the hardest days they've ever faced as a branch, talking about heartbreaking stories. I think we need to ensure we can reassure our staff that we will do everything in our power to make sure that they feel safe, whether they're at work here or working from home. That is the way, that's key to delivering the services we need to deliver too. And on that subject, we've stood down some lower priority services. That's absolutely right, I agree with that. I think it would be useful if people could know which services those are that have been stood down at some point, maybe something on the website, so that if someone's trying to access a service which has been stood down, they know it's not going to be there for a while. Councillor Stone's absolutely right about community groups. They are springing up everywhere, and that's really good. The attitude of the community has been fantastic over this crisis, and I think we should commend that. I know we're going to be making some efforts to coordinate those groups. I think that's good. We also need to be sure that whatever information we put out enables people who need help to find out where they can go to get that help, and know that the group they're going to is one that they can trust. Councillor Stone makes a valid point there too. And just one more thing, I think. What we need to do as a council is be ready. When asked, what are you doing? We must have an answer. So if the press say to the council, can you tell us what you're doing about this? We must be ready to give them an answer. It may not be all the answer, but we must be ready to give as much of an answer as we can. But once again, thanks to the leader for the statement. I think it was really worthwhile. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for that. Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Of course, isn't it great that we can work together? And I hope we can continue that after this unfortunate event. I really do. I just have one question. I was reading the LGA's report and the ADSS, the Association of Directors for Social Care's report to councils about social care. And my biggest concern is, having elderly in-laws, is that our staff that go into houses and they're having the right protective equipment, and not just our staff, because we commission lots of people to go into houses and look after our elderly residents. It does suggest in a guidance that we can help provide these people get protective clothing. I just want to be assured that we are doing everything we can for our staff and the people we are commissioning to go into houses.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for those comments. Yeah. We didn't propose to have a debate on this issue. If the leader wanted to reply to them, then that would be really good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I don't want to make a big, long statement in addition to what has just been said, but I think perhaps at an appropriate point at the end of this meeting, I can ask Anna to make a few comments that wrap up some of the questions that have been posed, and I've spoken to some members this morning about their concerns about the whole community movement and how we mobilise in a safe way, and they're right and good questions, and I know Anna has been in the forefront of lots of the planning here, so I think maybe some more questions come out during this meeting, and maybe near the end of it Anna could perhaps wrap some of that up and give a bit of assurance as well. Thank you, Chair. But thank you for the comments.
Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to our business items next, which are the item 8 on your papers. The first one is the council pay policy, and I'd like to ask Councillor Golby to move the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose the report as read and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Brown to second the report?
Thank you, Chairman. More than happy to second the report, and I won't add anything further in the interest of brevity.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask councillors any questions? Councillor Stone.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for the report. It's a really comprehensive one, and I can't say I enjoyed reading it, but I have read it word by word. The gender pay gap as described in the report is rather alarming. It's always the case, isn't it, that women are the most impacted by austerity and economic measures, first as workers and second as the users of services. So it's no surprise that we've got a gender pay gap. What is a surprise is the size of it and the fact the trends are going in all the wrong directions. So the question is, what is going to be done in this local authority to address that? Because if we have our staff working and being poor, if we have our staff using food banks, if we have our staff whose children are among the 47,000 children living in poverty in this county, then we have to take some responsibility and some action about that. The other question I wanted to ask is this thorny question about zero-hour contracts. We know they exist. We know they are very damaging. We know that people on zero-hour contracts can't get tenancies, they can't get mortgages, they can't get HP, they can't get credit. They live a precarious life. How many people do we employ on zero-hour contracts? And have we got a strategy to get those people into full-time, paid, proper employment? One of the things that we keep commending to the council is the Living Wage Foundation, Living Wage. The impact that has had at the borough is that it's moved the pay scales up by 3 points, which has benefited a lot of people. The number of people who directly needed that uplift was only 2. I commend it to you.
Thank you very much, and any other councillors wishing to ask questions? Councillor Golby, could you reply?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll mention about the gender pay gap, and obviously that's something that we're obviously very aware of. Its concerns are expressed in the report, and we've got 80% female staff in Northamptonshire County Council. But I know we have regular meetings with the unions, with the deputy leader, and they're well attended, and a lot of those concerns are expressed and brought to the fore. And of course, we need to try and equalise that gap and do what we can as we move forward. But as it stands, I'm happy to report, happy to recommend this report to Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does Council accept the report? Thank you very much. Amendments to the Constitution is our next item, and there's been an alteration to the motion. And can I ask Councillor Bowen to move the report and propose the alterations? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, the amendments to the Constitution. I'm not proposing to go into any great detail about the area, except to say that the Code of Conduct has not actually been amended since 2012 and was in urgent need of amending, hence the reason why it's here today for agreement. It was also undertaken with insight from the Commissioners, who also commented, and is underpinned by the Nolan principles, which we should all be aware of in terms of Code of Conduct and how we interact, councillors and officers between each other. So what I wanted to do is just go straight to the addendum, which is in addition to that already laid out in the Constitution, and that is about procedures for taking urgent decisions, which is why it's been brought here today. The Council's Constitution sets out who in the Council has authority to make decisions and the procedures for making those decisions when they are needed to be taken urgently. So, the urgent decisions by the Chief Executive may take precedence over those normally reserved at Council. So, where possible, the Chief Executive would seek the views of the Chairman of the relevant committee, the Leader of the Council, and in his or her absence, the Deputy Leader, and the Monitoring Officer. Questioned today has been about the involvement of the 1-5 officer, and I'm proposing that that be taken to the next Councillor Services Working Group whenever that may be arranged. So the reasons why that urgent decision is to take place must be made in writing, and in the absence of the Chief Executive being available to make that urgent decision, then it will be exercised by a nominated deputy. So you're wondering why this is here today. Well, it's fairly common in a lot of councils. It's just something that we've not had before and was in urgent need of putting into the Constitution. It fulfills specific needs at this moment in time, and as I've said before, full discussion will be made at the next Councillor Services Working Group. So I am here to propose that motion, and Councillor Patel will second it.
Thank you. Could I ask Councillor Patel to second the report?
I'm pleased to second that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does Council consent to the alterations? Well, yeah. Do you want to oppose the alterations? What, to the alterations? Yeah, we can't do it that way. We've got to suspend standing orders if we do that. So,
well let me help you find a way around that, Chair. I've got a suggestion to make. It's a really important one. I'd like to make the suggestion, and then the working group can go back and have a look at it. Yeah. Would that be okay?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I fully understand. Well, let me say, first of all, thank you for reworking the protocols. They read really well, and I think they're very important, so thank you for that. I fully understand the reason for having emergency protocols in place, and obviously we're in a very urgent situation at the moment, so they will be brought into play fairly soon, I'm sure. What's really important is that we do have good decision making, and we also have good scrutiny. What's also really important is that we have democratic accountability. What was left out of that list of people who the chief exec would tell afterwards or consult beforehand are the opposition groups, and I think it's really important that you add into that there'll be consultation with the leaders of the opposition groups, because that's where the democratic accountability lies, and you will be criticised very heavily for having a closed door and a secretive approach to things if we don't do that. So we need to be open and transparent, and you will know that the opposition leaders will be very happy to work in unison with the administration and with the CEO on urgent matters. We won't be obstructive, we'll be helpful. So I'd like you to consider that as an addition to the additions. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. It did mention in the motion about consulting opposition groups. That was insufficient for you, was it? Councillor McGee.
May I? It's in there. It's further up near at the end of the report. But we had a debate, and the debate is, if this is implemented, how often will it be reviewed? Because it can't be implemented forever. So there should be something within here to say how often it will be reviewed.
Thank you. Coming back to the situation in hand, we were being asked, or Council was being asked, to consent to the alterations. Is that still the will of the Council? Agreed. So we're agreed that the alterations put forward by Councillor Bowen are acceptable. Thank you. Does anyone want to speak to the altered motion? Okay. Can I ask you if you accept the advice of the report then? Agreed. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Capital scheme approvals is our next item, and again, if I can ask Councillor Golby to move the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a very brief paper. I'm happy to move the report. It's just one single item, which is the inclusion of Chedworth House for £300,000 into the capital scheme, which I understand is basically a transactional process which brings the ownership of the property back into NCC ownership away from Olympus Care, and even though there's finance involved, I understand we will still get a dividend back from Olympus Care to cover the cost of that. So it's quite a simple procedural transaction, and I'm happy to propose it to Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Councillor Smithers to second?
Happy to second that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you. Does Council accept the advice of the report? We've come to questions to the chairman of the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee chairman is self-isolating at home, but was anxious to give you a report, a copy of which is on your chairs. He did also ask me to read out the main points of it. It's a fairly short report, so I'll read out the main points of it. The committee has continued to concentrate on its prime accountabilities, internal and external audit, and the Council's risk management systems. We had an excellent presentation and discussion with the Chief Executive about risk management in our February meeting. Risk management has been frustrating the committee, but I am pleased to report that very good progress has been made over the past 6 months. I think that this progress is attributable to a change in approach by management and the continuing personal interest of the Chief Exec. The principal corporate risks are well understood and documented. Pandemic was identified as the #1 trigger for the critical incident risk. As is the nature of risk management, these risks will change over time, and the committee will continue to monitor them over the next 12 months. Further work is in hand to develop and embed the risk management in the directorates. We continue to receive regular reports for an internal audit. We have discussed limited options reports on debt recovery, IT governance, IT disaster recovery, IT procurement, and the public health 0 to 19 service. We have agreed some limited adjustments to the agreed internal audit plan for 2019-20 to balance priorities to available resources. Last week, the Cabinet agreed new policies on fraud, whistleblowing and anti-corruption, and also investment to secure an appropriate level of disaster recovery for NCC's IT systems. The genesis of both of these initiatives was discussion of internal audit reports at the Audit Committee. In the past, officers have not always been good in meeting the commitments they have given, particularly in response to internal and external audit reports. Sometimes the reasons are acceptable, sometimes not. The committee has been trying to help to change habits by monitoring various action trackers. While some good progress has been made, best practice is still not uniform. I know that some officers think that the action trackers are unduly bureaucratic. My message to people who think that way is just do what they said. You would then not have any need for the action trackers. In November, Brian Roberts, the Finance Commissioner, introduced a presentation on a financial management improvement plan. We have since discussed the implication of the plan with the Chief Finance Officer. While the steps in the plan have all been implemented, we will come back to assess the effectiveness later in the year. I have little concrete to report relating to external audit. KPMG has issued their audit certificate for 17-18, so that audit is now fully completed. They have also said that they will not be issuing a public interest report. The committee has yet to build a meaningful relationship with the new auditors, Ernst & Young. Ernst & Young were limited in what they could do until the 17-18 accounts were cleared by KPMG. Ernst & Young submitted a progress report to our meeting in February, but because of diary conflicts, they did not send a representative to the meeting, so we were unable to discuss the report with them. We did not understand their proposed timetable that suggests that the audit of the 18-19 accounts will not be completed until the turn of this year, and the audit of the current financial year will not be completed until November 21. We will be discussing this with them at our next meeting. I'd like to thank officers who support the committee, particularly Democratic Services and Internal Audit. Finally, if you have any questions, please send them to the Democratic Services and I will answer them, or he will answer them in due course. Thank you very much. We move now on to Cabinet business. Yeah, I was asked to ask if anyone wanted to speak to the audit report, though I did say that the chairman was keen to receive your questions in writing so that he could reply to them at his convenience. But if there is a direct question now, then I will take it. Councillor Stone.
Two questions, if you don't mind. I'm a bit worried about what the auditor is saying about our internal capacity to answer questions and to track actions. So I just want some reassurance that capacity issues are being looked at, because I know it's been an issue in the past, and reading this report, it seems as if it is an enduring issue. The other question, of course, is around the external auditors. This relationship doesn't seem to be at all satisfactory. So I'm just wondering what the process is then. Do we have to put up with those external auditors? If they're not satisfactory, can they be changed? There's no mention in this report about anything to do with our internal audit. So that'll be a question I'll be sending to the chair. But if those other two questions can be answered by the finance officer, that'd be great. Thank you.
We'll make sure those comments are passed on to the Chair of Audit. Yeah, thank you. Back to item 10, Cabinet Business. And if I can ask the Leader of the Council for his report.
Chair, I wanted to make a quick comment on the audit report. I think there was another one over there as well, if we're allowed.
Right, okay, we'll come back to the audit report. Yeah. Councillor Stambler, did you want to say something?
Yes, Chair. So these aren't questions, these are comments. I'll make them brief. I'm sure officers will have noted what the Chairman of the Audit Committee says about responses to queries. More worrying to me is what he says about the relationship, or lack of it, with Ernst & Young at the moment. Hopefully that's something that can be rectified fairly soon, and he does say so that they want to do that in a next meeting, which may or may not be taking place, because that's an important relationship for the future for this council and for money we may or may not have to spend on audits, especially given what Ernst & Young said at their last report about concerns they may have over value for money on certain items of expenditure at the moment. So, you know, Ernst & Young, if you're listening, build a relationship, please. Thank you.
Irving Swift.
Yes, I am part of the audit committee, and I must say the chairman of the audit committee has done a superb job, and his report is fair. Now, I will remind everybody that it's an open committee, and if you want to go into the details, you are more than welcome to sit at our audit, and all what has been said and all the question, the audit committee is very thorough. Our chairman of the council sits on the audit committee, and it's open, fair, and much better, and the leadership is listening to the recommendation we gave. Thank you.
Councillor Golby.
Yeah, just briefly, Chair, I just want to make a couple of comments. I thank the audit chairman for his report. I think it's a very good report. And just to make sure we don't underplay the significant milestone of getting the certificate for the 17-18 accounts. And I just want to make a point of recognising the hard work the 151 officer has put into this, because it has been a lot of work and toil to get to this point. And I think there is some concern around the relationship and the capacity with the new appointed auditors, and that's something we talk about regularly in the high-level strategic meetings we have, and it is being noted and fed back into the likes of MHCLG to recognise some of that concern around that relationship. But I'm very pleased that we're moved on from 17-18, which was a significant year for this authority, and we can look to move forward and hopefully in a good way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. As our debate has been a bit prolonged, our Chief Finance Officer had a few comments as well to make, and if I can hand to him.
Thank you, Chair. Addressing Councillor Stone's queries, I think the Chair of Audit wasn't suggesting that there wasn't capacity to deal with queries. It was just that the Council was not very good with dealing them on a consistent basis. And we have had a tremendous number of action plans from best value through to an ISA 260 report that was 260 pages long. So what we've done is to amalgamate all those into one consolidated action tracker, which means that it's actually easier to follow. It's not that the capacity wasn't there, it was just very difficult to follow a large amount of recommendations in various different inspection reports. In terms of the relationship with the external audit, I would remind councillors that it's very early days with EY. They've just taken over from KPMG and just been able to actually start the 18-19 audit as the 17-18 audit has been signed off. I think committee members and internal audit have expressed some concerns, especially over the lack of attendance at the last audit committee. That was well laid out at the committee, and EY have been invited to the next committee to present their side and their case in the way that they're conducting the audit.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Anyone else any questions to audit? Right, thank you very much. I've been asked to slightly alter the running order because the report from the leader is still being printed. So can we go to item 11, scrutiny business next, and then we'll come back to the leader's report in a few minutes when that's been sorted out. So item 11, scrutiny business. Can I ask Councillor Stamborough to propose the report?
Thank you very much, Chair. Whoever thought this might happen? I'm happy to present the report of the Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We do what I think is some very good work in scrutiny at this Council, and we are playing our part in putting this Council back where it ought to be in terms of its finances, and we will continue to play our part. Members may have noted the reduced number of meetings of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee that are being proposed in a report that we're not considering today. Not speaking for the Chair here, but he may or may not agree with me. Should matters arise where we need extra meetings, we won't shirk from calling those meetings if we feel they're needed. So I will commend this report to you and just say, as he's not here, I think I can embarrass the Chair by saying it's a pleasure to sit on a committee chaired by him, and the work that he does is greatly appreciated by all of the members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Councillor Perry to second the report?
Yep, happy to second the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone wish to speak to the report? No one? Thank you very much.
You can go back to the leader's report now.
Okay. Can I ask Council to note the report? Thank you very much. So we're back apparently to item 10, the Cabinet business, and I think the report has now been printed and circulated. Is that right?
I think it was there all along, Chair.
Right. No comment. I don't think we need too many reports or responses from the floor, thank you. Right, the leader's report. Can I ask Councillor Golby to tell us about it?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The report is as tabled. It contains quite a bit of the same information that was in the statement I read out at the start, because I started to write this report last week and soon realised by the end of the week, last week and over the weekend, things had moved on immeasurably, really. What was, as I put in the report, pertinent to highlight to members last week is frankly old news now. So I just want to capture in my introduction, I guess, the essence of the immense amount of work and dedication that is being put in by staff in the organisation, and how they've responded, to thank them and congratulate them in how they respond to they're responding to this critical situation. As has been mentioned by Councillor Stammer earlier, we need to listen to their concerns as they're feeding back through the unions, and highlight their concerns around home working. But I know that those comments will be listened to. It is an unprecedented time for the authority, for the country. We've got to work together. I'm confident in what I'm being briefed on, what I'm seeing in our connections, linking straight in with emergency planning, with public health, straight into central government, and things are moving very quickly. So I would ask members that you just advise people, direct them to things like the NCC website, which is being updated all the time. It's got some excellent links on around support for businesses, education and childcare, and general advice with links to government documents and NHS advice. I do go on to talk about what happened at Cabinet last week and some of the very positive papers we had there, but frankly that seems a world away from where we are now, so I'm not going to dwell on that. But generally, we know financially the authority is still performing well, but I think we've entered a different phase now. We've got to make sure that we offer as much resource as we possibly can to support the greater good and the greater need around how we deal and work towards getting through this virus. We know the decision was made yesterday to close schools, and I've spoken with the Director of Children's Services this morning about how staff and teachers are being communicated with, and something is going out as we speak. So I'm confident that the right advice is there, but we've just got to give the authority the chance to make sure they respond appropriately. And again, I think it's right that Anna at the end of this makes a bit of a statement, or addresses some of the concerns that have already been made. But I'm happy to table my report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There's just one written question to deal with first, which again is hopefully on your chairs, to Councillor Smithers from Councillor Stamborough. Does Councillor Stamborough want to ask any supplementary question? No, thank you. Thank you. Right, councillors, any verbal questions to the leader? Councillor Stone.
Thank you. Could I just ask the leader, we're in unprecedented times and we're going to have to learn to work quite differently as a council, but also with our communities. And it seems to me that there are two things that are needed. One is we need to up our game in terms of digitalisation and remote working, the use of technology to help us talk to each other and to reach out into the communities. But we also need to be really mindful of people who don't use technology and how socially isolated, even more isolated, they're going to become if we're not careful. And so the need for the creation of community hubs or local access along the way is going to be ever more important. So I hear what the leader is saying about the website. I think the ongoing development of the website is really, really important. Making it ever more accessible is really, really important. But we need to get messages out in a myriad of ways to people, not just the website, but using social media as well. And to be ever mindful of the people who cannot communicate in those ways. So we need, I don't know, community communication champions of one sort or another, or we need the facilities, don't we, locally, so people can access the information they need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd particularly like to welcome the leader's remarks about the support that will be made available to community groups. I have to say, across the Bug Book division, I don't think there's a single village where a community group hasn't sprung up to rally together and to help those who are most in need at what is a truly difficult time. That includes village shops, village pubs, normal members of the community simply trying to help those who may be vulnerable at this difficult time. May I just ask the leader of the council that members will be kept fully updated on any developments regarding the support available via NCC to those community groups, because whilst at the moment there's a great deal of energy, there's a great deal of appetite to get out there and help everyone within our local communities, I think the longer that this drags on, the more that our strategic and maybe even financial support will become critical to make sure that the momentum behind the desire to help everybody in our communities continues for as long as this situation prevails.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Could I ask our Acting Chief Exec to update us on the situation next?
Sorry, yes, thank you. I'll just try to respond to the questions as I've recorded them and hopefully cover any of the points, but I'm happy, obviously, to take further questions too. So just working down them. So the Strategic Command Centre is run out of Francis Crick House at the moment, and this comes all the way down from Cobra in a very standard structure. The people who represent us on the Strategic Command Centre group is our CEO. So me at the moment and Teresa when she returns, but every group underneath that has representatives that are relevant to that group. So to give you an example, there is a capacity and transfer group, which is a group that's dealing with people coming out of hospital, where we place them, how we secure beds for them, how we secure beds in the community if we need to move people around. There's an intelligence hub, which is getting the latest scientific data that comes in and then how that's used and disseminated to the group. There's also a logistics group, for example, that's dealing with equipment and how we get equipment out to the community. So there are a whole range of groups below them, but our lead on that key command centre is the Chief Exec, and also have the Chief Execs from all district and boroughs, all the health partners, and also representatives from the Army, Police, Fire, Ambulance, all the people that you would expect. In terms of reassurance to staff, we are contacting staff daily, we're doing comms daily about the changing situation. One of the things we put in place quite quickly was structures to communicate with staff who are at home and how we would do that and how we stay in touch with them, and also things like recording if people themselves are reporting as unwell, because as one of the councillors just mentioned, this is a long haul situation, so we also need to know as people if they become ill, when they become well, and when we can redeploy them, because those of us that are working in sort of long shifts at the moment in the incident room will need replacing and refreshing so that we can all keep this going smoothly. We're absolutely supporting them with FAQs, which they can access. We update them every single day in terms of questions people are asking, whether that's about health, whether that's about access to IT, whether it's advice and information, and also our policies on things. As you'd imagine, staff are asking us questions about how will they be paid, would they get overtime if they get repurposed, if their job changes, all those sorts of things. So we're in regular contact every single day. There's a briefing going out to staff. In terms of the services that were stood down, we did some time ago a pandemic exercise around fuel supply shortages, and there's a standard approach which I think all of our partners have now adopted, copying us too, where all of our services will be ranked as sort of tier 1 up down to 5, 1 being life-preserving services and 5 being general information and general things that you might do. For example, tourism. Not that I'm underplaying that, but right now it's obviously not something we'd be doing. So every single service director has categorised those, and then we will consolidate that. The commissioners have also asked the question, and then we'll be able to show you which ones have switched off or temporarily suspended, and we'll make sure that that comms is then going out to via our contact centre, via our website, so that people understand what we're doing. And as we suspend them, we're recording every single decision, so that there's a whole log of those things. If I turn to community resilience, obviously we really do want to capture what's on offer here. I think I accept completely, I think people are feeling a bit of a vacuum because they're not hearing enough. And one of the things we've done is bumped up the comms team so that we can actually have direct comms to members about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what we need from you in terms of facilitating and helping us get that link in. But to put into context, what we're setting up at the moment is a community resilience hub, where the County Council will act as the central hub across all district and boroughs and across the county and on behalf of all partners. So they've asked us to be the lead in terms of a single website where people will be able to register their support or indeed ask for support or help, as well as our contact centre if they can't actually get to web or other social media. And from that hub, we will be coordinating everything in terms of general contact. Are you okay? Are you well? Do you need help? do supplies of food, supplies of medication, general contact and things. And we're working with the Army. We'll be working with all of the voluntary sector groups who we've started meeting and organising in terms of how we're going to do this. As we've talked about, it's very, very important we make sure people feel safe with who they're contacted from. So that we're going to need a sort of a trusted trader type approach to, yes, this is a genuine offer of help. That is all being stood up at the moment, and I accept we haven't found the time to communicate out that that's what's happening. The other thing which I think is worth noting is the government is suggesting that county councils particularly will get a set of information at the moment that identifies every single resident in the county who's considered to have an underlying health condition. That will then allow us, with the district and boroughs, to proactively call out to people to check they're okay and if they want anything, and to make regular contact. Obviously, it's a big logistics thing here, as I said, and the Army will be helping with that too. And we're in touch with all supermarkets about then how we secure food supply and all those other things. So one of the things, for example, we know that is causing quite a lot of concern is people stockpiling baby formula. And we need to make sure we secure a supply that we can then distribute so that everybody gets some and that children are safe. So all of that is happening at the moment, and we're setting those things up. We will send out a communication to all members about what that's going to look like and where we are. As and when that goes online, we'll communicate with you how people get in contact, what you need to do. If you're getting contacts at the moment from voluntary and community sector groups that you'd like to plug in or dock into this, then you can. We do have an emergency planning incident room email which you can access on the corporate internet, and I'd suggest if you do that, but you make sure your email's very clearly labelled community and voluntary sector support, then those teams can direct all the offers that we get to one place who are organising this. It's a cell that just does this and nothing else, so that we can then start to build that database of information. So we're really keen we do that. With regarding PPE equipment or protective equipment, there has been a challenge, particularly with a concern that most of it's been going to health and the frontline in health, when actually obviously we're dealing with thousands more people in the community. As of yesterday, it was confirmed that every single organisation that CQC registered would receive a stock of PPE equipment, including face masks and all the other protective equipment and aprons that people need. They'll also all be given a national incident line number and email address that they can contact if they're not getting supplies. That started yesterday, and they believe by next Tuesday we should have a rollout to every single registered provider. It doesn't matter whether they're doing something for social care or private sector people. If they're registered, they will get this supply, and that's underway now as well. I'm losing my voice now. In terms of community digitalisation, Councillor Stone made the points. Just to say, we have already set up in our staffing groups both Skype access, because obviously another way in staying in touch with families, and particularly children's and case conferencing type stuff, is to do that and speak to them by Skype if we can. But we've also upped all of our own remote access. As of yesterday, we had twice the normal amount of people on remote access, and it was all stood up fine, working fine, and being tested in anger. But we can have up to 3,000 staff remote at any one time working and still contacting us. So that has been set up. We also note the point about people who can't access that. So we are keeping community hubs open, we are keeping public library points open, and we're working with the district and borough about how we can do that still face-to-face contact safely and reach out. But I think the single biggest thing is the information that's about to be shared from government means we will be able to reach out by phone call to these households, and they will be able to reach into us too, and we'll make sure that we've covered all of those channels. So that's a sort of status update for the moment. I've also bumped up the comms team, so we'll have somebody dedicated. Simon Deacon's going to help again, who you all know. He's going to be loaned back to us by the commissioners to help with member comms so that we can keep you updated with everything that's happening and then how you can help us too. So I hope that's helpful. If I've missed anything, then I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Auger.
Yes, very quickly. I don't think you gave it, but the community and voluntary support email address. But where is that accessible from?
So you can see it on the corporate email address book, the EP incident room email address. The reason I'm not sort of saying it out loud is what would not be helpful, because we have people manning this 24 hours a day, and lots of people. So you can see it on the corporate email address.
So on the sorry, Chair, on the
Outlook.
Outlook.
Yes.
You can search it on
Yes.
that directory thing.
That's right.
And what's it called?
And if you put EP incident room.
EP incident. Thank you, Chair.
That's fine, yeah. I mean, what I would say is obviously what we've got within that then, if you clearly mark it, then the lady Jo, who's responsible for the Community Resilience Coordination, is collating all that information. She's already talking to parish and district councils and all those people. So she'll just collate all that information. So as soon as we're ready to go, we can start pushing things out.
Thank you. Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, really good to see that our staff are being advised to work from home where possible. That does create one issue potentially in terms of the remote working capacity. I know my own job that we are all working from home at the moment, and because of that increased demand on that remote working, it is causing issues around logging in to systems. Have we got that capacity as the County Council to make sure that any systems that we are using remotely are easily accessible, or do we have any issues that are coming up? Have we got people working at the moment? Just want a bit of an update on that, so to make sure that obviously people who are working from home can access all the systems and can continue doing their work.
So we have capacity for 3,000 staff to work remotely. And as of yesterday, we were working with 2,700 people logging in with no reported performance issues. We had a little bit of a slow performance at between 8:30 and 9:30 when people signed on, which was good because they were signing on for the normal day. We've not had any issues in terms of resilience for that. Obviously, as you'd expect, we have plans. Again, not everybody has access to that, and some jobs you just can't do, and those staff are in instead. Obviously, we have plans that if there's any issue, we can prioritise who stays on the system and who doesn't. But as of yesterday, we were running almost to, we can go to another 400 or 500 people working remotely within the bandwidth we've got, and we certainly haven't experienced any problems yet.
Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I thank you for the report. I think the update is absolutely essential. All our communities are very keen to obviously work hard together, and communication is key, as we know. You quite readily understood, obviously, and connect with community voluntary organisations. How about the commercial organisations, in such as supermarkets, etc.? One of those key areas, and let's not joke about it, but it's essential, is you cannot get toilet paper. And a lot of people are worried about that. It might not be something they actually need now, but in 3 or 4 days' time, someone who isn't vulnerable could become vulnerable in another area as well. So how are those two particular areas, such as the basic need of people receiving those basic essentials for life, as well as people who are not vulnerable currently but could become vulnerable through either not being able to turn to doctors or not themselves thinking that they are vulnerable, and then doing so, how are they picked up? Because the quiet ones clearly in our society are those that need the greatest assistance. Thank you.
So we're already in contact with supermarkets and all the warehousing supplies for supermarkets too, for exactly that reason. So they're connected into this community resilience group, and we'll be working with them about how we secure supplies and make sure that then we can provide them out to communities. And also people will be able to register if they're not already on. I would imagine, judging by the data I heard yesterday, a lot of people in the county, one way or another, will be identified on this vulnerable persons sort of list, which will have contact numbers and all those things. And that's exactly what I'm saying, so that we will secure our supply. We will make sure that we can then logistically get food, medication and all those other things to those people. Some people will initially say they don't want any help and they will have stockpiled something, and in a week to 2 weeks they'll suddenly find themselves thinking, oh, I don't know what to do now, and we need to prepare for the long haul part of that, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we'll make sure we secure the supplies, and as well as what's going into the supermarkets, we have our own supplies to be able to go out and deliver to people.
Hotels, Mr. Chairman, very quickly, but hotels clearly are being underutilised, as we know, and they hold significant stocks of different areas, but also the rooms themselves, I'm sure, are being considered in terms of additional care facilities if that's required, and we have the staff to go with.
Yes, so work's already been done on that, and also I have to say our university have stepped up really strongly in this as well, and have offered up 400 rooms in the halls, brand new halls of residence that we will be tapping into to use to be able to do that sort of thing. The Army had already done an exercise about which hotels might be good ones to use because they're in the right place in terms of transport in and out and support and everything else. That's all being worked up in the command centre, and absolutely we are expected to have to do that too, because obviously the more we can cohort people together to care and keep an eye on people, especially if providers won't go into their homes, the easier it will be to manage and keep them safe.
Thank you very much. We are developing into a bit of a sort of question and answer session for the acting chief exec. If the lead is comfortable with that, I'm willing to sort of move on with it, as quite a few people have asked questions. So if that's acceptable, we'll move on. And sorry, Leader. Yeah.
Yeah, can I just make one point?
Of course, yes, yeah.
Yeah, just to say, I hear the requirement to communicate, and I've been talking to Anna all week about what and when we can get things out to different people. I went down to Westminster earlier this week, and that was exactly the same questions were coming from the MPs. So Anna is fully aware of that, and we're working, people are working really hard to make sure we get this website up. I've just circulated that email address to everybody, and I think the point needs to be made that we don't want to swamp that system, with tons and tons of help. I think we need to be quite rational and sensible at how we distribute and use that. But I hear very loudly the need and the want for information from everybody. So we're working on that. I'm speaking to Liam Beasley every day, 2 or 3 times a day, about what we can prepare and what we can send out. And I believe there's another briefing being put together as we speak. And also to make sure we have a good look at the daily staff briefings that are being sent to all members, because there's lots of information and some links on them as well. But thank you, Chairman.
Great, thanks for that. With that in mind, Councillor Smith-Haynes.
Thank you, Chair. As you may guess, my question is about social care, social workers. This morning on the radio I heard that there are moves afoot to bring social workers back into the system that are no longer registered. I'm wondering, have we got systems in place in order to do that? Also, previous care assistants, because we need help at every level if we're going to have our frontline staff being exposed to this awful virus.
Sorry, just one thing on the incident room thing. I would ask all members that you use it to send information to us. You don't disseminate it publicly, because that would do more harm than good in terms of us managing what comes back. So if you don't mind being the conduits of the community advice you get and forwarding them as opposed to just sending it out. Sorry, with regard to that, yes, so they only put the bill through yesterday that relaxed all of the requirements around registrations and people being currently qualified and everything else. So we're working through that at the moment, and we'll be working with HR about not only how we do that and bring those people back on board, but more widely if we need additional people who do general things, in terms of supporting the incident and taking calls and all those sorts of things. So we're working on HR with that at the moment, and then once we've read through the guidance in terms of what they're expecting from us, we'll be, again, mobilising that piece of work.
Thank you. Councillor Eakins.
Thank you, Chair. It's another brilliant piece of work by Anna and her team. And I should make sure that we commend you and your team for that work. You did mention baby formula and essential items. Recently being a grandfather for the first time, there's a number of items that we've found out that are hard to come by, which is obviously nappies and other essential baby items, not only for newborns but also toddlers. But one item which is probably a little bit sensitive at this time, is feminine hygiene products and essential items for new mothers that we do understand are, shall we say, are critical in the first couple of months, and then on from there. So can I ask, I know you've got the baby formula covered, are you covering additional items like I've just explained in addition?
Yeah, absolutely would. I was just giving that as an example of something you might not think could run short that quickly, but it had. So this comes back to that whole logistics thing. So yes, we'd expect all of those kind of items to be part of that. And as I said, some people will be able to go out and shop, and the shops will start to fill again with some things. And we will make sure we secure supplies for those that can't reach that then we need to be able to distribute it to. Oh, sorry, and I should just say, it's very nice of you to commend me, but it's not just me. There's a huge team working really, really hard. And particularly our emergency planning lead, Matt Hoy and Kerry, are doing an amazing job, actually, really long hours.
Chairman, and if we can pass on our appreciation for those efforts as well.
Yes, I'm sure we all agree with that. Yes, thank you. Councillor Chowan.
Hi Anna, I think I would also like to say thank you for the hard work that you're doing. I'm really impressed actually by the level of detail that you've just shared with us. I just had a couple of questions around the homeless community and how they're being managed from an adult social care perspective. I also wanted to ask a question about supplies to residential homes. So I've been contacted by a few in my division about not having sanitary hand sanitizers, for example. I know there's a shortage, but how are we supplying these things to the most vulnerable people in our society? And thirdly, if there's any help, I'm sure I'm speaking for most of the councillors here, if there's anything we can do as councillors, even if it's answering phones, please do let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's specific function planning around homelessness, and what we're doing at the moment is securing, again, places where, obviously normally night shelters and stuff like that often close at this time of the year, so keeping those open, and all the district and boroughs are currently identifying locations where we can care for homeless people and take them, and particularly if they become ill as well, then we need to build to make sure that we can care for them. So that's in situ, and I've seen information coming in today and over the last few days about how many spaces are available where, and they're coordinating that. In terms of supplies to residential homes, that's the thing I was saying earlier on, so not just PPP equipment. There is now a national supply helpline which all residential homes will be getting details of, and anybody that's got a disruption in supply can contact, and then they will nationally facilitate making sure that those supplies come out and that nobody is unable to get those things. We spoke to the Secretary of State as a group of CEOs earlier in the week, and that was one of the things he was very, very hot on making sure happen, because without them, obviously, our first line of defence will drop very quickly. And thank you, yes, for the offer for councillor support. I suspect we may well be calling on you to help. And I think that the thing is, as I said, about the long haul, it's making sure we've got enough people to rotate so people get breaks and things like that. So I'll pass that on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. Can I make a plea for food banks in all this? Because their donations have dried up. People are no longer donating to the food banks the normal shopping lists that they put out, essential items of food, but toothpaste, toothbrushes, toiletries. We've also mentioned nappies, baby formula, sanitary hygiene projects. All these things are regularly on the list for food banks. They're not being donated because people are keeping these items for their own and their family and their neighbours' use. Most food banks, particularly Restore is one that is in my division and I've supported for many years, have a Just Giving page. Now, if people cannot donate, could we ask people to perhaps go onto the Just Giving page to enable people organising these food banks to perhaps go out and purchase the necessary items. They have well-established contacts within the communities who are the most in need. They have regular distribution lists, and they're the people who have direct contact with really, really impoverished families. So we are dealing with the general public in a very, very admirable way. I'm incredibly encouraged to hear the detail that's been gone into. But we mustn't forget the people who are living in poverty, who have been living in poverty, and will continue to suffer even more in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, so food banks is one of the critical areas in the community resilience thing, because ironically, the supermarkets stopping people taking more than so many items is also stopping food banks being full, because normally people might buy 2 of something and a third one for the food bank. Now they can't do that. So food banks are one of the top supply items on our distribution and the logistics stuff. We talked about it yesterday. We'll have a look at whether we can encourage on the public website, the Just Giving way of doing things. But they're absolutely in our sights for which ones and who we need to help in terms of providing extra food and supplies to people, and then how we balance this thing so that we can still get them stocked up and people still give, or indeed we put into the food banks if need be.
Thank you very much. Can I ask if Councillor Golby wants to add anything extra?
Just that point around hearing the need to communicate and disseminate information, and we'll take that away. Anna's obviously heard that loud and clear, and to pick up some of those points, and again reiterate that thanks to Anna and her team we see that you know, they're working tirelessly and it's going to be full steam ahead, and whether us as councillors can put ourselves forward to chip in and do our bit at the appropriate time. I'm sure there'll be a will to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you all very much for your contributions. Thank you. Can I ask if Council notes the Leader's report and comments? Thank you very much. We went slightly over on that item, but I don't think in the circumstances that's at all relevant. Item 13, urgent business, I haven't got any at all, but we do come to exempt items, and I would ask if any members of the public are here, if they could leave the meeting, because under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that if the public were present, it would be likely that exempt information under Part 1 of the Schedule 12A to the Act of the descriptions against each item would be disclosed. Does the Council agree? Agree. Thank you very much. You should all have some pink papers on the item. Everyone got them?